Sling and Things.
Sup, and welcome to a momentous episode of Sling Things. This marks the last time this series will feature, in the background, Marvel Spider-Man for the PS4, because after today, I'll be switching over to this franchise's successor, Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales for the PS5. So in a way, this video is the end of an era. This is probably the final time I will ever record something in this game. Hell, this might be the last time I play this at all. And to mark the occasion, to really say goodbye to this game, I figured I should pursue one last moonshot for the road. One last self-imposed challenge that no one, as far as I know, had ever pulled off in this game world. And fortunately, I knew exactly what to attempt. In episode 9 of this series, I reviewed a biography on the 9th President of the United States, William Henry Harrison, because I'm a nerd! And in the middle of that video, I noticed that during one of my swings, I unintentionally came kinda close to connecting with a helicopter. Not close, but close enough that it got my attention. It was surprising to me, because I always thought the helicopters in this game were so high up that there was no chance that you could ever reach one. I mean, just looking at one from ground level, you'd never think you'd be able to touch one. But replaying this clip planted the seed in my head that maybe it was possible. That maybe, if I could get high enough, if I could find just the right spot on the map to leap from, maybe I could reach one. Maybe it was possible to do what no one had done in this game before, presumably, and take a selfie from a helicopter. Because you can take selfies in this game, which I probably should have said earlier. As far as I saw it, there were 3 possibilities. If I could even reach a helicopter, which was a huge if. A, I could land on top of a helicopter, which would be kinda neat. B, I could pass right through the helicopter, like a ghost, which would make things kinda complicated. Or C, I could immediately die from this, with the propellers ripping Spider-Man to shreds and causing fragments of his costume to cascade onto the faces of the horrified citizens below. That possibility was admittedly a long shot, but hey, one never knows how anatomically accurate games like this will be. Anyway, the first step was to peer out into the world of digital New York and to try to find a helicopter. And after that, it was to try to find a building along its flight path that I could plausibly leap from. And once I spotted one, I quickly grew an appreciation for how fast the helicopters move in this game, because they are impossible to chase down. If one ever gets by you, you can never catch up to it. So I wandered around for a bit, and eventually, I spotted a building that was at the same level as the helicopter I was following. And oddly enough, that particular building was really close to the basketball park where I'd spent all that time in episode 8. From there, I waited for a new helicopter to arrive, since as it turns out, fortunately, the helicopters move in a straight line in this game, and they're always at the same height. So, you can totally predict where one will be in this game. All I had to do was wait. So, I waited. And when one finally showed up, I leapt into the air and naturally missed it by a mile, which forced me to return to my spot and try to set up for another go-round. It was then that I encountered the first unexpected obstacle in this endeavor, which is that it takes a frustrating amount of time for a helicopter to arrive. No matter where you are on this map, it takes at least 2 to 3 minutes for a new one to show up. And that was a giant problem because I could already tell that this quest of mine was going to require a lot of attempts. And thus, during the course of this experiment, about 80% of my time allotted was just me waiting. And it had to be diligent waiting too, because it was always random which of the 2 directions the helicopter would come from. And if you weren't looking out at the city at the right time, it was very easy to lose track of it if it was coming from there. Eventually, another one did show up, and I made another attempt that was to no avail. So, I kept trying, and on the 7th jump, I got within a few feet of the helicopter before I pressed the options button to pause the screen. And what was enlightening was that when I accessed the game's photo mode, I was able to investigate that helicopter at close range. And to my surprise, I learned that the helicopters in Spider-Man are totally hollow, that you can pass right through them and see inside of them. and that their interiors aren't actually rendered. The only parts of the helicopter that you can even see from in there are the parts that are on the outside of it, like the lights. Discovering this was big for me because right then and there, I was certain that I was not going to be able to physically connect with a helicopter. The most I could do was pass right through one. The reason I was so sure of this is because there are also boats in this world, and the boats can't be interacted with either. You will phase right through one if you happen to cross its path. And what's funny is, if you pause the screen and go to photo mode when a boat passes through you, you can take a look at the passengers on the boats, and the passengers look distorted. They have no feet, they have no hands, and they have giant, poorly rendered block faces. It's like they were transported from an N64 version of Minecraft, if such a thing existed. The helicopters, on the other hand, didn't even have a pilot inside. They were completely empty, which indicated to me that the people who made this didn't anticipate that anyone would get this close to one, which I liked. What all of this meant was that if I reached the helicopter, taking a selfie on one couldn't be done. That was out. But I now knew that it was possible to take a selfie from inside one, and that was something I knew I had to pull off, even with the knowledge that doing that was going to be immensely difficult. Thus, I went back to jumping, and fell back into the pattern of missing, returning to the spot, waiting patiently, timing my jump, failing to hit the helicopter, returning to the spot, waiting patiently, and on and on and on. And after a plethora of attempts, and after a couple hours of this, I came to the conclusion that it wasn't possible to do this from this location. That no matter how well I timed my jump, I was always a little short, which felt by design. It was easy to imagine the programmers intentionally positioning the helicopters just far enough away from the buildings that you couldn't actually interact with them. And yet, I wasn't ready to give up, because there was still a chance that I could pull this off. I just needed to find a building that was higher than where the helicopters were. That way, in theory, I could drop down on top of one. So, I abandoned my post and began searching the skyline for a better spot to leap from. And each time I peered into the sky in search of a helicopter, I felt more and more like Henry Hill at the end of Goodfellas. And if you don't get that reference, you should. It's a great movie. It's better than The Godfather. Huh? How about that for a hot take? But anyway, after a thorough search, I uncovered the perfect location to try this from. There is a building in the financial district near the bottom of the map that is not only really tall, it has helicopters flying by it on either side of it, meaning I would have to do much less waiting there than I did at my previous spot. Finding this spot was such a boon for me that when I arrived there, I honestly thought this would be easy. I remember thinking, oh, well, this is child's play now. Landing in the center of a helicopter will be a breeze now that I'm certain it's possible. Well, there are two reasons why no one had ever taken a selfie from within a helicopter in this game. Reason one is, why would you? And reason two is, it's incredibly hard. For one thing, the helicopters move so much faster than you do in this game that landing dead in the center of it is like hitting a hole in one. You have no margin for error. And I just couldn't do it. I tried and I tried and I tried. Eventually I had to build these attempts into my schedule in order to continue doing them without losing my mind. I would listen to the sports podcast that I follow, and as I was doing that, I would multitask. I would spend the entire time, as I was listening, trying to land Spider-Man in the middle of these helicopters. And for the longest time, I felt like I was getting nowhere. And yet, I knew it was possible. I didn't know how long it would take for me to do this, but I was diligent. I had to do this. Not just because it was the best way to cap off my run in this game, and not just because of all the time that I'd already sunk into this, but because, I had already paid for the art that you saw earlier in this video, and to not use it would be a waste. So, I kept at it, and after 70 tries, I finally got somewhere. This was big. I had passed through it, at last proving that my theory was right. But I had passed through it so quickly that I hadn't pressed the options button fast enough, and I wasn't able to take a selfie in time. It was at this point, as I was bemoaning my failure, that I remembered that you can briefly slow down time in this game if you pull out your web zip, and I felt like a dunce for forgetting that that was a thing that you can do in this game, because it's obviously helpful, and without it, doing this was, if not impossible, super challenging. Utilizing slow motion gave me much more of a chance to be precise in when I paused the game. But that was the extent of it. The slow-mo only lasts a couple seconds, and even in slow motion, the helicopters still move really fast. It didn't detract from the fact that I still had to be precise with both my aiming and my timing if I wanted to pull this off. The only real difference was that now I had a much better chance of pausing the screen in time. So I resumed my attempts, and whenever I got within the vicinity of a helicopter, it still felt more random than anything. The only way Spider-Man can be in midair in this game is if he's jumping or swinging from a web sling, which meant that I was always moving at an angle when I was doing this. It would have been easy if I could have just planted myself in midair in a big spider web or something in between the buildings, but since you can't do that in this game, my best route was to try to swing into a helicopter from just the right angle, from just the right distance, at just the right speed, and then, if I could pull that off, press pause at just the right time to bring up photo mode. It was daunting, but the more I did this, and the more I got into the pattern of trying this out, the closer I came to making progress. By day 5, a milestone was reached when I was able to clip the back of a helicopter when I went into photo mode. Note how Spider-Man's fingers and part of his leg protrude through the metallic surface. And after further attempts, I made even more strides. Soon I was getting Spider-Man's leg caught in the chopper, then one of his arms and part of his butt, then another one of his arms. Second by second, inch by inch, I became better at this. And on multiple occasions, I even managed to go directly through the center again, only to not click the options button in time. Again. By day 6, I was grazing against the helicopters more frequently than ever. It was all worth it too, because eventually, I managed to get Spider-Man's head stuck inside of a helicopter. And because you can pivot Spider-Man when you're in selfie mode, I technically could have claimed victory here, since Spider-Man's head was inside the chopper during this moment. I could have just rotated him so that he was inside the chopper when I took the selfie. But to me, that would have been half-hearted, because, only a fraction of him was in the helicopter. And plus by this point, I could just tell that I was close to pulling this off, and I knew that I couldn't leave it like this. Not when so many people were counting on me, in my head. So I went back at it. I made attempt after attempt after attempt after attempt after attempt, and 10 more attempts after that, with one of them going almost perfectly, except I didn't press pause in time again. It was after all of that I tried to connect with a gray helicopter, but I missed. So I circled around the giant beige building that by now I was incredibly familiar with. I looped around and set up for another attempt, and when I did, I saw that there was another chopper heading towards me right then, which I wasn't anticipating. It had snuck up on me because of how focused I'd been on the previous helicopter. So I raced forward and web-slinged off the building, not really having any expectations. I let go after just a second, and as I propelled myself, I realized, to my amazement, that my aim was dead on for once. But it looked like the chopper was going to outrace me to the spot, so I increased my velocity, diving straight towards the center, and I knew that Spider-Man had gone through the windshield, but I didn't know if he was still in the copter. I had failed at pressing pause so many times by this point that I wasn't sure that he hadn't passed through the bottom too. So I went into photo mode to investigate this, knowing this was the moment of truth. I dipped below the helicopter and found that nothing was there, because Spider-Man was still inside of it. I had done it. I had won. Exactly as planned! Well, sort of. Upon closer inspection, the very tippy toes of Spider-Man's feet were all that were still outside of the helicopter. But that was okay because, again, in selfie mode, you can pivot Spider-Man, which meant that when I would take my selfie, he would pretty much be completely inside the helicopter. And even if that wasn't the case, I was going to claim victory on this anyway because, oh my god, I wasn't going to do better than this. Now, admittedly, this moment would have been cooler if the insides of the chopper were actually rendered so that you knew right away that that's where Spider-Man was, instead of it looking odd. But I got around it by rotating him so that he was directly underneath the propeller blades, so that, hey, you'd know he was inside a helicopter. And then, at long last, I took my selfie, knowing that I had snapped a shot that no one had ever snapped before. Probably. All in all, this was a rousing success, except for all the times I messed up, which made it take forever. This challenge, this moonshot, took about half as much time to finish as the previous two, but this was the most satisfying one of the three, because those other challenges had a lot of testing and setup to them. This was just relentless, monotonous failure. For hours. It was grueling to make these attempts in between waiting and waiting. But, hey, I had to try this, because if I didn't unlock the mystery of these helicopters, if I didn't see if this was possible, who would?